Hello and welcome. You're watching QTV and you're watching the Week in Review. I'm your host, Ade Darami, and I'm glad to say that we're back with the full fat version of the show. That's 10 stories as opposed to the slimmed down Ramadan version. Mr. Mboj, as ever, thank you for joining us on the show.
Pleasure's all mine, Ade.
And for anybody who's joining us for the first time, this is how it works. It's called the Week in Review, and we take 10 big stories from the week just gone by, and we go through them in some detail. And so President Barrow paid a surprise visit to the ferries to see where they're being refurbished. We've had lots of ferry wahala, and the Gambia Police Force now has an automated fingerprint ID system. And the Ministry of Information has launched its website and various social media handles. And also OIC summit is coming up, and the Secretariat has been briefing diplomats ahead of the summit. So these are some of the stories, and lots more to come. So let's get going, shall we? Well, the first one that we'll deal with, His Excellency the President made a surprise visit to inspect the ferries after some ferry wahala that we'd been having here in the Gambia. What was that wahala? Well, people were struggling to cross over from Banjul to Barra. Both ferries were out of commission. Have a look, have a listen.
First, we will apologize to the public and the customers for the apply their effort. And today, the services we have been offering for years. It have stopped temporarily. But it's not our wish. That's not what we want. But we should have service this very long time.
Now, there you are, Mr. Mboj. We heard the leader there, head of state. He went to visit this place. And for those who don't know the Gambia, if you could just give some context about the importance of the Banjul-Barra ferries and what happens when they're out of commission.
Oh my God, how many thousands? Absolutely. God, it's the busiest, perhaps, crossing point really, in the country, without a doubt, thousands of them. So that's it, when you have both of them now inactive. Oh my God, can you imagine the number of people affected by this?
Well, this is it.
Massive.
People having to cross over from canoe. And it's people and vehicles. Normally that would be on the ferry. And neither can get across. Obviously, if it's a vehicle, you're not going to get over by canoe. But if you're traveling as an individual, you can just obviously jump in a canoe and get across.
And you do have a lot of people who live in Barra who come to work. They commute.
They commute,
See, this is what they use it for. They commute daily. So it is hugely disappointing, really frustrating. You can't exhaust the words with which you can describe this sort of thing. And what next? And for me, what immediately struck me was that the frequency with which we do have these breakdowns. We've been covering these stories, haven't we? I think in February something happened, in January.
That's right. There always seems to be something.
There's always
usually it's one or the other, but this time it was both. Of the ferries were knackered, and they're having to undergo maintenance, and so they've decided to not just repair them but also refurbish them as well, give them a paint job whilst they're at it. But you're right, and His Excellency the President started there by apologizing to people, and it does impact people greatly, because if you are, as you say, somebody who commutes, then really your daily commute, you don't want to have to do it in a kind of possibly a rickety canoe. And until recently, when 1,000 life jackets were donated for use, many people did so without a life jacket, so it was also quite risky, a bit hairy.
Absolutely. And Ade, I think in the end we have to think more fundamentally. Really, what's the best service that can be put in place? Is it going to be something the ferries would they be run by Gambia Ferry Service, or where can we put in private sector, the so-called PPP? Ministry of Finance actually advised that that running ferry services is really suitable to be outsourced, in the concession agreements, as they call them. So perhaps that is the debate. I heard during our report the managing director of GPA, Mr. Jobate,
yes.
Saying that yes, they're considering where and what aspect that private sector can come in and what they can play, that sort of thing, sure. And sort of also saying that perhaps within 16 months or so there'll be 2 new ferries.
They've signed the agreement to purchase 2 more ferries, new ones.
Which got me thinking, is this Gambia Ferry Services buying 2 new ones, or have you brought in a private sector?
It sounded
I'm
like
not sure.
Government, because there's a minister that was announcing it, but also it was also announced that they're once again resuscitating the idea to bridge it, Banjul Bara Bridge, and the initial estimates a while ago, some years ago, was about $500 million. But that now they're saying that they're going once again to revive the feasibility studies and see whether this is something that's workable. Obviously, it'll have to be a toll bridge to pay for it, but and it's to get away from the kind of constant breakdown of these ferries and so on. But that's quite a task, building that sort of bridge.
Absolutely, Ali, granted, but you know that stuff like that will probably take 10, 15 years.
Yeah,
I didn't know.
Yeah,
in the meantime,
what
is the best way, as it were, to ensure that we have a good service, a regular service, a sustainable way of having a regular service? Sure. We know that the Gambia Ferry Service, it's been losing money.
Yeah, quite.
You know, the last report I read from PEC, the Public Enterprise Committee of the National Assembly, sure. They lost 193 million between 2018 and 2020, something like that.
And even though my Wolof is pretty bad on Hell, senior official just the other night here on QTV said that in fact the Ports Authority were having to pay the wages of the ferry service personnel because they were making such losses. Yeah.
Absolutely. And in our report, was it the president? Somebody made the remark that something like the Gambia Ferry Services, it is not a commercial. I think that's what they call it. It's not a commercial service, but a social service. That the ideology, if you like, embedded in that. Very, very, very left wing. Yeah, but there, what are you saying?
To some extent, both.
Well, to some extent, it is commercial because we pay.
Yeah, quite.
Or are you saying that what we're paying is just so small
that it's subsidized
because it is subsidized and the sort of thing? To which I am like, what you need is an organization that can run itself.
Yeah, quite.
That is really what the deal is. That's it. If it means that I, as a customer, I need to pay a bit more, perhaps you just can't run away from it. Anywhere in the world, we cannot be sentimental about this. You pay for services. All this subsidizing, remember what Tinubu did when he came and said, subsidizing, it's not sustainable. That's not good economics. You do have left-wing people always subsidizing. You're not going to do anything. You'll be wasting. Yeah, it's not
as the
sustainable.
Conservatives used to say, there isn't a magic money tree.
There isn't.
Funding these things. Yeah.
So I feel sometimes that I have to make that right-wing view, if we can call it that. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's always this left-wing soppiness. Yeah, I hear in our public discussions on policy. You have this soft, wet.
You say subsidize things, but we don't make enough money to subsidize it.
You don't make enough money.
So don't subsidize it. Let it run itself. Yes.
That's it. Yeah, so all of these institutions, really, we call them state-owned enterprises, for God's sake.
And of course, they're all being looked at with a view to actually, selling them off, possibly.
That's really what you should do. Yeah, they are enterprises. I even heard somebody from NAWIC as well made a similar point. This is more of a social service, not a commercial one, as if to justify the fact that they're losing money.
Yeah, quite. We can't spend all day on this, but ferry services suspended for the moment, and people are having to use other means to cross. And for some people who's too scared, they've chosen not to cross. But thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. Second story takes us to the Gambia Police Force. They now have something very, very interesting. What is it? An automated fingerprint ID system. Not just a fingerprint system, but an automated one. Have a look and have a listen.
It's a very wonderful initiative. As we know, we used to keep records of criminals manually, but with this automated fingerprint database, it will help us, in enhancing our record keeping. and also the easy trace of criminal records. And for the fact that it is also a sub-regional project, you can see that the crimes are transnational. So criminals move from one point to another.
Transnational crimes, and it's the Automated Fingerprint Identification System, AFIS. Mr. Mboj, as you said there, if all you have is stuff on paper, it's virtually impossible to compare across borders, when you and I know now that a lot of crime is actually cross-border crime. So finally, we're about to have it here in the Gambia. In fact, it's been launched.
Oh, absolutely.
And about time too.
Yes, I mean, we know that today in management, I really cannot do management without technology.
Quite.
We have moved into that world. So, of course, fantastic idea. Then it can allow you to tap into all the information systems, as it were, sharing of information, as he said. Right. So obviously, in investigating crime, you have so many different factors, so many different elements. So where technology can help, yes, you bring it in, and it helps you. Sure. But we all know that you have the other elements, as it were, because you need a whole architecture,
this is
like, of joint
solutions,
don't you? So this is just one plank in a whole complex, if you like, of different.
So not only can we keep fingerprints of people here who've been, arrested, whatever, but we can compare in case somebody is caught and is suspected of having committed a crime somewhere else in another country, a neighboring country that also has the system. You put it in the computer and the computer will do the matching for you, rather you taking it across borders and somebody looking at it through an eyeglass or something. So
it makes information sharing easy.
Absolutely.
Then
Interpol have been doing it
Interpol and the speed as well.
Of course, exactly. It's almost instantaneous.
Absolutely. So that's efficiency. If it's speed is part of the definition of what is efficient in many ways, doing things quickly in the shortest possible time. So absolutely, we just sort of need to use it, and all the aspects of our crime detection as well improved. Where also we need to put in their own kind of technology. You put it in because these things they work in tandem. Otherwise, you're not going to see the right outcome.
Exactly.
So when you just focus on one, absolutely, rather than the whole complex of what you need to do really to get the outcome you want. Otherwise, it might seem like wasting.
Quite.
Isn't it? A system, whatever,
is
as good as the weakest link I do here. So this is,
and it has to be able to link.
They have to be able to link.
It can't stand
Otherwise,
alone.
you are not going to get the right outcome. Things don't stand alone, really, when it comes to solution.
Well, thank you for that. And now on to our third story. We have a new-ish Minister of Information, and he's been making some very, very bold steps to kind of change things, so that it's no longer business as usual. The Ministry of Information is launching a new website and also a new social media handles, a whole plethora of social media handles. This is one I will be watching like a hawk. Have a look.
So going forward, we'll be engaging you constantly on a sustained basis to ensure that information is passed on to the general public. So the ministry is ready. Our doors are open. Like the PS has said, we are the gateway. I know sometimes it can be a challenge getting information, sometimes, in some ministries, but see us as a partner where now every information you need, just channel it through the Ministry of Information, and we'll do as best as possible to engage the technical ministries to get you that information.
There you are. So this is what we have with a Minister of Information and a Ministry of Information trying to take control. I smiled when this phrase came up, our doors are open, and I said in the office, I hope it's not a case of our doors are open but the windows are closed. Because he seems to want to get away from the traditional aspect of ministries holding on to information. And I'll just give a quick example of recently where I felt he had kind of gone across the ministry's role, and that was to do with the shooting of a Gambian in Germany, and where his ministry, Information Ministry, had issued a press release before the Foreign Ministry had done. And in fact, there was a bit of confusion because the next day the Foreign Ministry did issue a press release. So, but the intention seems to be good about reaching out and sharing information. And as I said there, new website, new social media handles, and if you go on their Facebook page, they post several up-to-date things a day. If anybody's watching and you're wondering why this matters, don't take my word for it, just search, and I guarantee you 90% of Gambian ministerial websites are so out of date that for some of them, the latest information where it says latest news is March 2020. No, that is not a misspeak. March 2020. That's how up to date some of them are. So he wants to change that culture. Mr. Mboj, after my rant, over to you.
Absolutely. The first thing I say to him is good luck. You are right. The first, one of the ideas, one of the questions that sort of was been mulling on was the fact, what's really the remit of the ministry?
Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
It would be quite interesting to know. Would they be sort of like the watchdog, to make sure that all these other ministers, you better make sure that we try to implement the Freedom of Information Act, as it were, something like that.
That came up, and he seems to want to be to marshal all the other, because the weekly press conferences and press briefings, what he will do is that he will bring people from other ministries to come and say their bit, but it will all be marshaled by his Ministry of the Information, which is kind of what their job should be, yes, amongst other things.
Granted, I understand all of that, but I also realize that all these different ministries, they have their websites.
Yep.
They suddenly become dormant, I don't know. They have their units, communication units, you have the more communications, there's all of that.
Not that they communicate well at all,
not that
but that's my beef anyway.
Well at all. Yeah. So with that, the Ministry of Information would try to make these things more active.
Well,
that would be an interesting part.
I think that is kind of what he's been saying.
Yes.
For example, he wants to revive all of their websites so that they are properly up to date. Because if I want something from Ministry of Agriculture, I don't have to come to Ministry of Information. I need to go to Ministry of Agriculture's website, click on the menu of things that I'm looking for, and get that information, because it relates to that ministry and its work. But they are so out of date. And of course, what he's promising, and as you rightly say, good luck to him, because they are so out of date and they're so behind the curve that it's a mammoth task, really. But essentially, he seems to want to be playing that coordinating role to bring them up to speed, so that the information that people are seeking is readily available from the various ministries.
Absolutely, and other things will be perhaps even more difficult because, from what I could gather, you know, from the news, they're working on a communication strategy.
Yeah.
So without that, I really don't have quite the roadmap, as it were, to help me in certain things. So they will need to do that. But what he's trying to do is really a kind of cultural shift. You need even a kind of cultural shift to really move these things. You're trying to move us away from certain habits.
This is it. And part of the habit is this. We've got the information, and we're keeping it, and some of it doesn't necessarily need to be secret information. It's not secret, it's actually public information, and that's what the kind of freedom of information, access to information, I should call it freedom of information, is the UK one. That's kind of what it's about. Access to information is there in the name. That, you know, the public is entitled to access certain information that's in the public domain.
So it's going to be like a kind of a culture, as it were. So that is why some of our colleagues were really excited about what Dr. Cisse is doing and all the rest of it. Well, I said, yes, I mean, you like the initiation, as it were, the initiative. He has initiated to do certain things, but you know that you have to suspend judgment for a while and see how far it goes.
Absolutely.
Can he really sustain it? That's really what the challenge is.
That will be the test, because he's fighting a culture. It's not just, come and bring these up. These people, you know, who are holding up, they're used to holding back this information, not releasing it, not updating their websites, not giving the public up-to-date information. It's not going to change overnight. He's got quite a task on his hands.
That's it, and there's something else. If I want to change something, my suspicion is that I may need to introduce new mechanisms. I am not sure whether the old ones will give me new outcomes. So what new mechanisms would these things be, and how would I get everybody else to do it in the longer term?
We'll be tasking him on that, and as I said to people, this is something I will be watching very, very keenly and closely. But thank you for that, Mr. Mbodj. Story number 4, and the OIC Secretariat recently held a briefing. Briefing for whom? Well, this time was for diplomats. And what was it about? Of course, the upcoming OIC summit. Have a look, have a listen.
I'm not going to take much of your time because I know that time is of essence for every one of you. We will leave our offices, go for other things, but you will leave you will leave here, continue what you're doing in the Gambia, and then also would be expected to brief your respective capitals on the spot because we are running against time.
One of the major aspects of preparations for the summit is logistics, notably accommodation and airport pass. However, Ambassador Langyabo, Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Binta Jame Sidibe say all that has been taken care of by the various subcommittees set up by the Secretariat to facilitate the successful hosting of the summit.
I will hold up both literally and figuratively my hands that I was at that session. I gave a presentation there. In fact, I was the MC. But it was interesting having these diplomats because we heard Ambassador Essa Bokar C there say something that you will take back this information to your various capitals, and that was what it was about. It was bringing the diplomats, the ambassadors, the high commissioners, the ones who were, just honorary consuls, and say this is what you can expect as diplomats, and please. And so for me, the most interesting session was the questions that they were asking about security, about accommodation, including things like how many guns can we bring in if we come in with a security detail, and very, very important forum, I thought, for the diplomats.
Absolutely, but you also know, or at least I will suspect that, of course, you're going to have these group sessions, but I'm sure also individuals, wanting to find out information regarding their delegation.
Which could not be revealed in public.
Of course, so they're also dealing with that perhaps on a one-to-one. So you can imagine that with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, at least you're going to have a flurry, as it were, of interactions and discussions and all the rest of it. I mean, come on, the logistics here are absolutely enormous.
Mind-boggling.
Mind-boggling, really. And of course, some of us were a bit apprehensive, but one understands. We hope that we do well, and all the questions were answered. We keep on hearing reassurances that we are ready in this, we are ready in that. I've even heard the security advisor, he's one of the security outfit, saying that security-wise, we are ready. You can never be 100% because there's an X factor. Obviously, we are as ready as reasonable. One can reasonably expect. You can never go over all contingencies in life. That's a dangerous thing. That's hubris. One should be careful with things. But yes, they say that they are ready. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. Isn't it? We'll see.
We shall see. So bring it on and let's see. But thank you for that, Mr. Mbodj. And that takes us up to story number 5, which will also take us to a break point where we'll have an advert. And the Gambia, of course, is long promoted itself as a particular kind of tourism destination. But of course, you might not know that at the High Commission in London, there is somebody who that is their very job, is actually trying to entice people to come to the Gambia. Who is that person? I won't spoil it for you. Have a look, have a listen.
People want to see, and even our gastronomy. You have overall tourism activities, but there are niche products that complements what you have. And thank God the OIC, like you said, is the second biggest gathering in the world. And of course, we have to take advantage of it. And that's exactly what we're doing. And we hope more of this kind of event will be hosted by the government and by our country, because it is an avenue for exposure. And not every country has the advantage of organizing the OIC conference. If you are privileged to have that, we're going to make good use of it. And thank God we have a fantastic product, which is the center. So that's why we are promoting the MICE both in the UK and in all our source markets, and even in the sub-region.
And there we heard Adaman Jai speaking to our colleague Loli M. Kamara, who's currently in London, and she visited him and she got him to actually tell us, Mr. Mboch, about some of what he's doing, what his job is, and how he's trying to kind of get people interested in coming to the Gambia as a holiday destination.
Yes, exactly, especially being there in England, in the UK, perhaps it's responsible for other parts of Europe.
Of Europe, yes. I think France and...
You see, when you look at the figures, the statistics, most people come here for sun, sand and sea.
This is it, yes.
Really, particularly from Britain. I think 40-something%. Wow, huge percentage. Yes. You'll have others, the wildlife, I mean, our birds.
But there's another S which we'll leave out as well.
Of course.
Well, we won't go there.
You wouldn't go there. And now we're trying to promote heritage tourism.
Sure.
There's these notions now, eco-tourism. There are all these terms being bandied about.
Sure.
But it still remains that people come here mainly for sun, sand and sea and the other S.
Yes.
What can you do? Can it be state-led? See, I keep asking myself this question. How can we revive? How can we give it a new lease of life to cater to our concerns now? Perhaps the idea of the smiling coast, perhaps it's a bit passé now, because now we don't want to simply to be smiling. We want, for instance, environmentally friendly, as it were, tourism. That's what people respond to these days.
And there was somebody who came here and they launched, and in fact I think there are still the remnants of it here. It's a sustainable tourism company, and the person was of Sri Lankan descent, but she was here in the Gambia and she worked with Gambians. She's gone back to the UK. But I think they're still doing that, and they want it to be sustainable. And so you kind of integrate with the communities, you live with communities. You're not just in a hotel, kind of consuming and laying on the beach and getting roasted.
But this is the key, Adi, for me. It cannot be led by the state.
No.
We have this habit of the state expecting the state to lead everything. No, you want the state, as the cliche goes, create the enabling environment.
Yeah, sure.
Creativity, imagination, that's really what private sector can also bring, money and all of that. Sure. I want the state to create the laws, the legal framework, be an honest referee and make sure that we're not going to rip off the state, there for the people. Sure. But you open the market up for individuals.
Yeah, because what I was going to say about that is that when I visited that very office at which Loli was, that because it was based in the High Commission, it gave people a certain reassurance, because when you came there, they weren't trying to sell you a kind of state holiday. Actually, the offer in front of you was all the commercial organizations that are running tourism thing. It's just that it was centralized in there. It could have been outside of the High Commission, but it gave people a certain sense of, it's based in the High Commission and I want to do this kind of tourism. Okay, here it is. So even though it was within the High Commission, it wasn't kind of state controlled in the sense that all the commercial organizations that are running tours here, they're all there, and you could get them all in one place. It's a kind of one-stop shop, really. And I'm not sure that came through clearly, but essentially that's what it was. Yeah, because I used to go there in years past.
To have a desk, as it were, at our chancery over there regarding that. To me, no, that's not the issue. It's about the policies that I have at home. Because whatever policies I have, I want to encourage private sector to come in. You still need that official desk for information, for help, help that you can rely on the High Commission to help you with. So that sort of thing. There'll always be that service, as it were, to render. But really the idea is the policies back home. What policies? What are you doing? I mean, we heard when Hamad Ba was there as Minister of Tourism, government, they're building this eco lodge, building that. It is not for the government, to build that. We've gone beyond that now. How do I bring in the private sector? It is not. So when the formula is wrong, yes, you can put in all the money you want, you are not going to see the outcomes.
This is it.
Are they?
There you are. I think that's a beautiful point to end on, and a beautiful point to take us. And when I say end, I mean this part of the show. We're going for a break. Join us after this commercial break. Don't go away.
QCell, the fastest growing network in the Gambia, now presents to you the eSIM. QCell's eSIM allows you to electronically scan a code and join the world of digital SIM cards. Customers with physical SIMs can easily switch to the eSIM as well. So rush now and get connected with an eSIM and start using the latest mobile technology with your trusted GSM operator. For more information, call our customer care on 111. QCell, Sunubus. We innovate, others follow. Terms and conditions apply.
The art of juggling is a true spectacle of agility, coordination, and speed. A symbol of progression, precision, and mastery. .5G speed is like having the juggler in your pocket.
Amazing.
With lightning-fast download and upload speeds, you'll easily be able to juggle even the busiest workdays. Whether you're a busy entrepreneur, a creative, or just someone who wants to stay connected. Juggle your tasks with ease with QCell 5G speed. The future is here. It's fast, reliable, and efficient. First brought to you by QCell. We innovate, others follow.
Hello and welcome back. After that commercial break, you are watching QTV and you are watching the Week in Review. I am still Ade Darami and my guest is still Mohamed Mbodj. Mr. Mbodj, thank you for your interjections thus far.
Thank you very much, Ade.
Thank you. And coming back, story number 6. Yes, that means you missed 5 cracking stories, but we've got 5 equally exciting ones to go. Okay. Higher Education Minister, Professor Pierre Gomez. Recently, I spoke to him and he was quite excited about some of the developments happening in higher education, including this one. He went to visit where they're building a school of dentistry. Have a look.
And in fact, the best you can get it is in Banjul. Beyond Brikama, you won't get any dental surgeon to see you. So having this is something that should have happened long before now.
Se Hundong, the consultant for this project, highlighted some of the facilities in the clinic.
Basically, it's a 3-story building. On the ground floor, you have the administration side, offices for the dean, his secretary, and admin. You have doctors' lounges, you have nurses' stations. Obviously, you have the reception. You can see that we have 2 stairs. One is a means of escape, alternative means of escape. And then we have a ramp that will take you to the 1st floor, where we have an operating theater, where we have 4 laboratories, including phantom hair laboratory, and dental laboratory, basically, and then lecture rooms. So each of the floors also have lecture rooms. Again, lecture rooms that will have all the modern equipment.
And now, as the man said there, beyond Brikama, you won't get a dental surgeon to see you. And the reason I wanted to show people that is that when I spoke to the minister, Professor Pierre Gomez, he made the point that it's worth getting people to know that, yes, it's a school of dentistry, but it actually means that they operate on real people and your teeth and your problems, and they want to create more dentists. We don't have enough. And so, if you have a toothache in some parts of the country, well, all we can tell you is suffer. We're trying to change that paradigm, aren't we? Yeah.
In 2005, according to the report that I saw, we had 10.
Yeah, quite.
Dentists.
Quite.
In 2017, we added some more. 2015, we added 17.
Right.
So in 10 years, we added 7.
Yeah, quite.
So that's really the rate of growth,
if
you like.
Or lack of rate.
Or the lack of it.
Yeah, quite.
So how many do we have now? I don't know, 23, 24?
Thereabouts. And that's not enough.
It's
that's
unbelievable. Like the population of 2 million,
2 million plus.
That's awful. So absolutely, that will help.
Yeah, it definitely helps.
That should help.
Yeah.
Rarely would you hear anybody at school, oh, I'm going to be a dentist.
Well, this is it.
It's just not a popular profession. I didn't know.
And yet what people don't realize
really.
is that it could be quite lucrative. The ones who are here, maybe they're keeping it secret, but actually they're doing rather well financially. Because many people go to them for, and in fact for me the worst pain I've ever had has been a toothache.
At one point or another, you're going to have dental issues.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. So therefore, with them, I suspect that they will always have work.
Yeah, it did, quite.
The market. So actually, dentistry is really the best profession to go into right now.
This is it, absolutely.
It's almost like you have a monopoly, very few of you, really. So, absolutely, we will all need dental services. Come on, go into dentistry.
Bring it on. Thank you, Mr. Mboj. And on to story number 7. And this one is something, again, that's very, very close and dear to my heart. And when you hear the clip I'm about to play about the UTG's 16th convocation, you'll understand why I'm excited. Have a look and have a listen.
For the School of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences, we have 38 students. For the School of Arts and Sciences, we have 280. For School of Business and Public Administration, we have 417. For School of Engineering and Architecture, we have 30. For the first time in the history of this country, we'll be having graduates in civil engineering, 10 of
we cut him off there, but that was the bit I wanted you to hear. And Mr. Mboj knows why I wanted you to hear that, because ever since I have been in the Gambia and I've looked at the roads and I've looked at the bridges, and I was sitting in my first week here and I was complaining back in 2019 to somebody, and I said the roads are terrible, the bridges, I've crossed bridges that need to be. And he said, oh, don't worry, China is a good partner and they will come and fix all of that for us. I was incensed. I said, where are the Gambian civil engineers? And I have attended every convocation since then. And as the gentleman said there, he prefaced it by saying, for the first time in the history of this country, we will have 10 people graduating as civil engineers. Mr. Mboj, I could do cartwheels if I had space to do it in this studio. I'm so pleased.
Absolutely. And the person, your interlocutor, who was telling you about the China bit, well, that's the dependency reflex, isn't it? Instead of
do it yourself, say, oh, somebody will come and do it for. I was incensed.
When we were younger, and you were few friends whose parents were civil engineers.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Quite. So it's not as rare. It's not as rare as dentistry.
Well, no, quite. You know,
I never.
And almost all of those people studied abroad. And
all of them studied
but
abroad.
Now they're studying here and qualifying here.
Absolutely. That's the wonderful thing for the future.
Yeah.
It's just that how these things look when it comes to public projects.
Yeah, quite.
You see, you have the civil engineer, but again, the whole structure of governance. You see, this is really what our issue is. Yeah. So we will churn out engineers and all the rest of it, but that on its own, it's not it.
It's the beginning.
It's the beginning.
It's not the end.
Because we know really the real snag where it is, and that's really what we need to tackle. Otherwise, it's going to be a kind of fake, slightly flawed optimism. If you
I mean, for me, the reason I got excited is because all the ones who I did meet who were civil engineers here all say, oh, I was hired as a consultant and I came from Spain or Portugal or wherever. One was from China. In fact, the chap I was with, he then, minutes later introduced me to somebody who was from China, who was a civil engineer, and he said, yes, I'm here on contract, and so they were getting all these contracts. Well, we don't need a contract from outside. You have people who are qualified, who have trained here. And I was also excited because I included the bit about the engineering and architecture. You look around the Gambia, you don't need to be a genius for people to tell you that a lot of buildings are built without a proper architecture having had anything to do with it. There's one building that I pass on the way to work every morning. It's near a petrol station. It's just been left abandoned and kind of, I was going to say half built, quarter built, because I think they realized at some point that this building's not going to work. It's a 4-story building and it's just a kind of skeleton because of course there was no way an architect was involved in constructing that. And so again, something else that 30 of them who qualify as architects. So I'm quite pleased.
Absolutely. But you realize that there's a new reorientation that was took place, because most things we do informally.
Yeah, quite, including building our houses.
Building our houses, or anything, word of mouth, I know that. But perhaps anywhere else, they will be worried about the qualifications and that sort of thing, where were they trained, perhaps, and that sort of thing.
Here, people seem to think, how cheaply can I get it?
How cheaply can I get it?
And you can see in the lack of quality in what the end product ends up being, as you end up paying for that lack of quality, because you have to have, I remember a colleague who had to have a whole kitchen built and had to have it knocked down and rebuilt because of the mess made by the person that had been contracted to do it, because the person just wasn't good enough, wasn't qualified, and ended up spending $250,000 to get it fixed. What should have been fixed in the first place for $100,000.
That's it. So, but perhaps if we had the kind of structure that would encourage professionalism, where you may need to get professionals
City
to
and
do
guilds
and whatever.
These things where you can check somebody's qualifications.
Your electrician, your plumber, your this and your that. Without that respect, maybe all of these architects, when they graduate, for many people perhaps they wouldn't be able to afford them. They're going for consultants. They're going for all sorts of things now.
Sadly,
but we remember, household names. Top brains working at PWD, we used to call it Public Works Department, and that sort of thing. Top engineers. So you had top people working within the state system.
That's right.
That was what you had then.
Absolutely.
And then now I'm not so sure what it is like, the quality of employment in our state system.
Yeah, and one of the things I should say very, very quickly before we move on to the next story, when I found out from there's a Carpenters Association here in the Gambia, and when I found out the fantastically good quality of some of what they produce, and I said to them, why don't I see this in people's houses? And they were like, well, people think it's expensive and so on. They don't want to pay for quality. They pay for rubbish. They buy a chair or a settee that's been cobbled together by some guy who's just kind of made it up. And then, 6 months later, they're having to replace it. I was really impressed. And I'm like, you guys need to advertise. You need to have a program where people can see that quality furniture is being produced in the Gambia, because if you look at in most houses, you would never believe that was the case. Yet it is the case.
Then you find that a lot of people import.
Yeah, well, this is it. Because they think they have to import, because they think it's not here.
Yeah.
And the reason they think it's not here, because you guys are not making enough noise, you're not advertising yourselves. I think briefly they had a program on QTV, but that kind of seems to have gone away now. But honestly, I was really, really genuinely impressed with how good the quality was. So carpenters, if you're listening, I know we're slightly going off topic here, but it's about quality, and that's why I was getting excited about civil engineers. And you rightly said they might qualify, but will they get employed? Will they be deployed?
Yes,
so that would be
this is why this is what I'm going to say is not really advisable, I think, in certain economic circles, but that's why sometimes you need to protect certain areas. We are not going to import A, B, C and these certain things because I want my local industry.
Yes,
you see?
And the only way the local industry can do it is if the quality is good as what you might be importing.
That's exactly it. So that's why, even though to a lot of people protectionism is a bad word, but all the countries in the world, they do it.
They do it.
It depends on which areas that you want to protect. So this is the key. How do you encourage things? This is how government comes in as a facilitator.
Yeah, quite.
All these ministries, you don't need to spend. Be a facilitator for more private money to want to come in.
Right. I think the theme for this week should be enabling environment. Well, thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And that takes us on to story number 8. Look, if you open the newspapers or you go on social media here in the Gambia, you will be hearing about illicit drugs, particularly Kush. But it's not the only one, and so they're trying to clamp down before this thing really gets out of hand. How are they doing it? Have a look, have a listen.
Recent trends suggest that the Gambia serves as a farming, transit and storage hub for various illicit substances, including cannabis sativa, cannabis resina, commonly known as hashish, skunk, cannabis, kush, cocaine, tramadol, and ecstasy.
Now, look, the reason I chose this story is because there's a kind of, we mentioned about fingerprinting and we mentioned about transnational crime in an earlier story. So you had the Standing Committee on Defense and Security, and that's to whom this message was being given. Because they kind of interlinked these things. If people get to know that the Gambia is an easy place from which people can go on this so-called backway journey. We heard recently of 3 Bangladeshis being caught when people were trying to do it. Then they think, oh, so this is an easy place through which to transact drugs. Some of the drugs get transacted from here to other places. Some of them end up staying here and end up being, quite a problem for the society, don't they, Mr. Mboj?
Absolutely, and in the first place, it becomes popular for
okay.
being a transit point.
Yeah.
Because of perhaps weak institutions. There are reasons why they become popular in the first place.
Yeah, quite.
You see, that's really what's going on.
That's it.
And we've known this for a while.
A very long time.
Be it CIA reports, I mean, all these international agencies, you read about it. They've been talking about Gambia, Guinea-Bissau being a transit
Senegal.
point, a hub, Senegal. And we've known these things for a very long time. The difficulty is how do you stop it? Because mostly people who do these things, they have so much money, they can really bribe, anybody. They can bribe their way through. Even though, yes, we've seen examples where they've made seizures, be it in Senegal or be it in the Gambia. But I really cannot judge that. I do not have the broader picture. The last time they said they had seized something estimated to be worth, what, $149 million, something like that. I said, yes, on the face of it, it looks huge. But now imagine perhaps theoretically maybe $1 billion has gone through.
Well, I was going to say,
then
how
suddenly
much did get through? Then it's not so big.
It doesn't look so big. So it's difficult for me really to judge what impact these seizures are having on the broader trade, as it were. How much of a dent are we making into this trade and stopping it? I cannot judge that. I don't know.
That's right. So something for cause for concern, and the session was all about what do we need to eliminate this, and I think that one will run and run. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. Story number 9, our penultimate story. The President received a delegation, and I tried to remember this name, but it's called the West African Postgraduate College of Pharmacists. They came to State House and they had some things that they wanted to mention, such as this. Have a look.
We are here in the first place in the Gambia, Banjul, for our annual general meeting and scientific symposium. The theme of our symposium, our AGM and symposium, is medicine safety. And there are specific issues which have raised that are relevant to Gambia, but also to our member countries. And because of that, we thought we should engage with the highest possible level of authority in the Gambia, so that this issue, especially of medicine safety, will be escalated, so that necessary action will be taken. That's the primary purpose of our visit to His Excellency the President.
Medicine safety, Mr. Mboj, so much so that the name Made in Pharmaceuticals has become a dirty word in the Gambia, medicine safety. And one of the reasons why I brought this story is to bring back to people's attention how important medicine safety is when we look at the AKI, acute kidney injury incident, which killed at least 70, we speculate possibly more than 70 children here in the Gambia. High number for such a small country. And so we have these pharmacists saying, yes, we came for this conference, but we felt we should come to the President, and the item on the agenda was medicine safety. And in fact, they specifically mentioned AKI.
Absolutely, and all the failures, as it were, in our defense, in our defense system. Oh, absolutely, we must. I mean, we import all our medicine. We don't make medicine in
apart from those who go for the locally made stuff.
And now the whole world is your market.
Yeah, quite.
The whole world is a trading place. You can buy them from anywhere,
sit in your home,
wherever, sitting in your office. So what you need would be your defense filters.
Sure.
Are they working? Can they be bribable? You see, this is really the weaknesses of our system because of the human material.
Well, indeed.
This is what we keep saying all the time. You can have your technology there, but without the human material, that really makes all the difference. Then that's how bad people can really come and just take advantage of the system. It's just because of what we are. So this is absolutely key. Otherwise, we'll have lots more of AKIs in other areas.
And not wishing to put you on the spot, but one of the reasons why I mentioned this, and I'll ask the question, is that in the kind of post-AKI world, we heard about all sorts of measures that we were going to implement and commissions that we were going to form to kind of, but do you get a sense that we have gotten there? We formed these commissions to kind of protect us from dodgy medicines?
No way. They'll probably tell you that they're still working on it. Working on the modalities, the strategies, and that sort of thing. But one only hopes that because of now, they introduced a monitoring body in India, all places, and we thought, but this was really where the problem began, the sources of our problems, and now we're giving it back to them. Yes, okay, fine, we've got that, and all medicines will have to go through some process before we approve them and all the rest of it. But again, before the AKI, we had the laws in place.
Well, this was it.
It was a human failure.
And even in India, I mean, I wish I could remember the guy's name and the book he put out. He criticized the kind of checks and balances that were in India. And he said that, you know, people don't want me to speak up because there's a multi-billion-dollar industry in India, and one that India is proud of. And they think that me coming out with this book and exposing these things is going to damage you know, not just the country's name, but the billions of dollars that we're making from the rest of the world by producing kind of generic medicines, particularly.
That's absolutely it. So, and this is really what our issue is. You are going to have these adventurers. You're going to have these maiden pharmaceuticals around the world. You're going to have all sorts. Your only defense is that what you do within your national borders. But again, if you have the sort of people where you're so bribable, anybody can get away with things, then we are really in trouble. These are really the hard facts. Really nothing else. Really. These are really the hard facts. So how can the state sort of make sure that we weed out? We've got enough filters in place, even to weed out the enemies within, if you can call it that.
Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And that takes us nicely to our last story. We're talking about, are we checking this, are we checking that? We're passing laws, we're calling things. Well, if you've been in the Gambia in the last few months, you would have heard about Operation Clear the Road. A lot of fanfare. And you're probably sitting there thinking, yeah, I wonder what's happened. Guess what? We also wondered what had happened. And then the police thought, come along with us and find out. What did we find out? Have a look.
After clearing this road, you know very well, because all of you participated, you have cleared this road. And then seeing that this mechanic garage and other, my friend, business people are going back to the roads. That's why today, since I left my house, I didn't reach office. I just started it from the airport junction. Now I am at a Sukuta Jabang roundabout to make sure that all the vehicles, the garages that are located along this highway, move from there.
Simple lawlessness. We heard there from Lamin King Koli. Mr. Mboj, we kind of predicted this, that when they did this Operation Clear the Road, as soon as their backs were turned, people would go back to these places because it's where they used to ply their trade. Illegal mechanic shops just spring up, and some of them are huge. And they're in plain sight. And that's what we heard King Koli complaining about, Mr. Mboj. How do we deal with this?
That's it. And is it going to go around now from now on every day?
I think it's meant to be, you know.
This is not the solution for enforcement. You cannot go every day. I mean, this was really predictable. And this is it. You've cleared the structures, right? What next? Are you going to make nice, if you like, pavements and the like? What would be the mechanism for enforcement? You do hear people tell you stuff like that. So if you're going to just rely on one central authority forest stuff that really would affect so many different areas. So can you be everywhere at the same time? It was like with the smoking ban. Sometimes you just see sort of these central authorities going round. This is where you use local government.
Absolutely.
Each would enforce within your particular area. That is why you have to empower local government. Because it is through local government you can make these national policies applicable really fairly everywhere. Otherwise, you're just going to identify certain areas. You pick on them more than you pick on others.
Because they're the most obvious
They're
ones.
the most obvious
Headline
grabbing ones. I remember with the smoking ban, because we all knew where you could go, to smoke and stuff like that. So the restaurant I used to hang out, the owner said, "Oh, this is so unfair. They always come to me. They select certain places. They obviously go to all. So this is it. Unfairness will be built into a system because the enforcement mechanism, it really doesn't add up."
Yeah, and when in relation to this, when it came up on the This Morning program, myself and Ibrahim Abalde got into a bit of a, kind of back and forth over it, because he was saying they should give them a pat on the back. I said, no, give them a pat on the back if they clear these places and a year later they don't have to come back to say, we're clearing you again. Then you can say, okay, it's worked or it's working. But to go within a couple of 3 months and then you're back there, come on, that tells you it's not working. Why are you giving them a pat on the back? Because it is not working. And so, there needs to be, as you said, you devolve the power to local authorities, and they can monitor within their local municipalities or whatever it might be. And that way they can enforce it. It's not the police having to come and do these big photo ops.
A lot of stuff you do it through local authority. It's just that we are in a peculiar situation here, where sometimes local authority and central authority, I mean, generally you do have what they call creative tension between the two, but here you can have certain dysfunctional relationships. But most things about government that you really want to implement nationwide, I mean, central authorities are poor. I mean, we have done studies of how other countries run these things, but here we always want to rely on central authority. So unless, of course, you're going to have the commissioner of police go every morning, every day to all of these areas, that doesn't work.
Can't work.
Think about how to enforce effectively.
Thank you for that, Mr. Mburj. Think of how to enforce effectively. And as I said, we were talking about enabling environment. That was being the theme for this program. But thank you for your interjections throughout, Mr. Mburj. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And as I said, we're back to being 10 stories until the next time. Goodbye.